Hello, my name is Mike Sample, and my career is a special education teacher. I'm currently a 8th grade resource literacy teacher in USC 253 Emporia, Kansas. My difficult question was about when is the time to exit or dismiss a student from special education back into general education. And my thesis was that it is appropriate to exit or dismiss a student from special education back into general education when their academic level, their social and emotional levels, their behavior is in line and appropriate as their peers in general education. So effectively, if the student is on the same level as their gen ed peers, then it is appropriate to remove them from special education. Target audience for this is going to be obviously the students that are in special education, but also those in general education, special education teachers, general education teachers, school psychiatrists, school admin, school counselors, pretty much about everyone in the school. So anyone in the educational system that you're in your building is probably going to be a target audience. Oh, and the parents of the students as well. They would be a part of the target audience. In this essay, I focused my research kind of more on the traits of students that exit, kind of what the statistics look like on their outcomes when they do exit and go back into general education, and then also if they always stay out of special education after they exit, because I really wasn't 100% sure. I used the Kansas Special Education Process Handbook for any procedural type questions that I did not already have a good knowledge of, or that I, didn't get a clear answer from a coach, a coordinator, someone like that, someone in a position above mine. So, kind of how the process works to exit a student is the exact same as it is to enter a student into special education. There is an evaluation that's done, and during the entering aspect, the evaluation is, do they have an exceptionality, or the way that a lot of the research I read put it, a disability classification, and does that impact their academics, is really our standard in 253, and that's what the Kansas process guide says as well. So that's to enter. To exit would be the opposite. They may still have the exceptionality, but does it impact them academically anymore? That's the question. So how do you get there? Well, in both evaluations, there is a team of professionals that performs the evaluation. The team is usually consisting of a special education teacher, a school psychiatrist, a school admin, a general education teacher, and probably most importantly, the parents are involved. I happen to have just submitted a draft for a 3-year reevaluation, and this is kind of what it looks like. It is 17 pages. I don't know if you can really tell how big that is from here, but it's 17 pages, lots of information in here. The same thing as we do for a initial evaluation is all in here. It's the same thing. School psychiatrist does evaluations and assessments. The special education teacher does evaluations and assessments. The general education teachers are brought into, their opinions are used. Standardized testing results are used. Parent input obviously is used. So it's a pretty big process, and that determines whether a student's going to enter into special education or if they're going to exit out of special education. Now, one unique thing is if a parent requests that they want their child removed from special education, obviously there's not a whole lot you can do. You can try and convince them otherwise with facts, data, whatever, if they obviously need to stay. But that parent can pretty much trump all on that. Now, if a parent wants their student on special education, the evaluation process determines that, not the parent's choice. But once they're in special education, the parent can say, hey, yes, I want them to exit. Or if you're presenting that exiting is the right option, they can say, no, I don't want them to exit, and they stay on services. So parents hold quite a bit of power, as they should, in this process. Some of the specific research outside of the special education process handbook that I used were probably one of my favorite ones was modeling the time-varying nature of student exceptionality, classification on achievement growth. That kind of showed me what special education results look like next to general education for students, and then when they exit, if they exited out, how their results still looked against their general education peers. And it pretty much looked like I expected. They were typically lower than your gen ed, but they were at least average on a standardized test, which is a pretty good outcome in my opinion. I also used a piece of research, the relationship of special education placement and student academic outcomes. And then who exits special education back to general education, exploring predictors of declassification. And those were both from different education-specific academic journals. And they looked at the issue similarly but different. One looked more at statistically kind of what the makeup looks like of students in special education, and then the ones that exit, and then the ones that come back. So what that research showed was about 7% of students exit special education services annually. Some of them are due to being dismissed. Some of them are from moving and not re-entering special education when they move. Some of them are at parent request, and some of them are from graduation or they, have aged out. Now, out of those 7%, 3%, up to 3%, come back to special education. So that kind of set my mind at ease that there is no once you're out, which I think most people would know, but parents get nervous about that kind of thing. And a lot of students do come back because, you're never 100% sure just based off of data and results how a kid's going to perform when they're in that environment without all the supports and structures that they've had in special education. So it was nice to know that a decent amount of them come back to special education for services. On top of that, typically the students that were more better behaved, the ones that didn't have as many outbursts, the ones that I think the specific statistic that I saw was they don't get in-school suspension. They typically have a much higher success rate and a better chance of exiting and staying exited than students that have those behavioral issues that get things like in-school suspension or even out-of-school suspension. So that was also good to see. So my personal experience that, a lot of those kids with the behavior issues, they're probably going to be with us their entire career, and that's totally fine. That's obviously what we're here for. But it was nice to see that the kids that kind of can behave themselves a little bit better, have a little more self-control, are the ones that tend to exit more and tend to have more success once they exit out of special education. Really, in conclusion, the results are what I expected. It definitely is an appropriate thing to dismiss students from special education as long as they're performing at the acceptable level as their peers. Students are more than welcome to come back to special education. The process just starts over. They have to do another evaluation. To get out of special education, there is an evaluation that's required unless it's a strict parent request that's unwavering. And students do succeed when they exit special education back into general education. And, honestly, for a special education teacher, it's such an oxymoron. That's really the ultimate goal. That's what we want. We want these kids to be in their least restrictive environment, back with their peers, totally just in that general education environment, because social emotional aspects can start to take control when you have a kid that is effectively socially and emotionally at the same level as their peers, and academically maybe they're just a smidge behind, but is it doing more harm than good to move that kid on, maybe with some general education supports in place, than to keep them in special education? The outcome to me was obvious, and I think that's what we strive for as special educators. Is we want these kids to be back with their general education peers. We really, really support getting them built up to the fact that they can move back, filling in those missing gaps. That's the whole point, especially of what resource is supposed to do. We're not supposed to be keeping just the bad kids or the kids that are never going to get it, that are never going to go to college. That's not the point. The point is to fill in those missing gaps, find that piece, that whatever that connection is, whatever I like to look at it as something together, whatever link is broken, and putting it back together for them to process things and be able to perform at an acceptable level with their peers in those core requirements. At any rate, those are really my thoughts on it. Once again, this is about exiting special education when it's appropriate. And that's all I got.